It's just a couple days before Halloween. I'm in the mood to talk horror films, so today I'm gonna stop and rank all 12 Friday the 13th films from the worst to the best. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Chandler, and I started this channel essentially because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate to that you like to talk about movies more than the people around you, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. Also, with that in mind, I'd love to hear your take on the franchise, so go ahead and give me your ranking down below. We're gonna disagree, and that's the fun part, that we can have different thoughts on the same movies, kind of disagree, argue back and forth a little bit. So please comment down below, comment on each other's comments. Let's have a nice lively discussion, and let's get started. Coming in last place is Jason Goes to Hell. For me, this movie was too weird and too big of a change too late into a franchise. We're 9 movies in, and suddenly they introduce this plot line about the bloodline of the Voorhees, as well as Jason's essence possessing people, and it just didn't work for me this late into a franchise. Also, I felt like the transition from Paramount to New Line, the production value dropped, just the way it looked, the music that they used, it all just felt cheaper to me. So the end result is a movie for me that just does not work. Coming in at number 11 is Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Now, this is a baffling concept for a sequel, and it's hard to not just take it as a shameless attempt to just continue the franchise. From the fact that the inciting incident involves a guy handing out candy bars, to the fact that it has a Scooby-Doo ending.
It's Asia Shanks,
my greedy neighbor.
It's hard for me to take this movie seriously. Now, there's some fun kills in the mix, and Tommy is so over the top in the film that the weirdness is kind of enjoyable, but on a story level, I just can't take this one seriously. Bringing us into the top 10 is Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, or as it's better titled and as many have said before, more like Jason Takes a Boat to Vancouver. This is a movie that has some concepts in there that are kind of interesting. Whether they went in the direction of Jason on a boat killing people on a cruise, that's kind of interesting. Or if they actually had Jason go to Manhattan and spend the movie killing people in Manhattan, that would be interesting. But this is a movie that could not commit to any of the ideas that they put on the table. So you have Vancouver as a cheap substitute for New York for a small portion of the film. And beyond that, you don't care about any of these characters. The only good thing in the movie is the part where Jason punches a guy's head off.
Take your best shot.
Beyond that, it's just a pretty bad Friday the 13th film. At number 9 is Friday the 13th, Part 3. Now, I know for a lot of people, this is one of the more iconic films in the franchise because it is when Jason gets his hockey mask. For me, though, this one's the most forgettable of the franchise outside of him getting the hockey mask, because it's just another group of people go to Crystal Lake and they get murdered. In 3D. But the plot, the characters, it's just more of what was in the previous 2 films without any distinct flavor to it. So for me, I'd much rather watch one of the first 2 or one of the other ones that just have something distinct and unique to it. So this isn't one I revisit often. Coming in at number 8 is Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Now, in broad strokes, I actually really enjoy the Jason vs. Carrie idea of the plot here. That's a nice, interesting twist that kind of changes things up from the usual plot lines in these films. Unfortunately, the execution of the good idea does not live up to the concept itself, in particular because the characters here aren't really likable. Our Carrie stand-in Tina is so psychologically broken and played in a way that she's just not likable or enjoyable. But the final showdown with her using her powers does have some nice moments in the mix. And actually for me, this is probably the one that I saw on cable television growing up the most. At number 7 is Jason X. Now for me, this isn't necessarily a good movie, but it's a very enjoyable film. It's got its thumb planted firmly in the cheek, and it's so audacious in its bad ideas that it's just a lot of fun to watch, whether you're talking about Uber Jason or the hologram sequence at Crystal Lake. Or little liners like, "He got screwed." There's so many things here that are so over the top that it's hard to not have a smile put on your face by this film. Now, I understand how some people could consider this one just a total piece of garbage, a betrayal of the franchise, but for me, I have fond memories of watching this one with a group of my friends at the Dollar Theater and just having an absolute blast. And number 6 is the original Friday the 13th. Now, this is an interesting franchise in that the original film has a different killer than all of the other films inside of the franchise, and that gives the film a distinct, unique flavor in that it's a bit of a mystery as to who the killer is and what's going on. But in other ways, I think that hurts the film a little bit in that the way the kills, kind of the juicy part of the film, are presented, it has to hold back a little bit to maintain the mystery of what's going on. Add to that, the characters here aren't the most interesting of the franchise, even though we got Kevin Bacon thrown into the mix. With all that said, it's still an iconic film inside of the genre and one that you have to watch. Before I give you my top 5, be sure to tell me your ranking down below in the comment section. Also, read and comment on each other's rankings. Let's get a nice, lively, yet respectful conversation going down in the comment section. Also, after this video, be sure to check out this playlist up above of my best and most up-to-date horror franchise rankings. If you enjoyed this video, there's definitely stuff in there that you'll love. Bringing us into the top 5 is Friday the 13th Part 2. Finally, Jason is given the keys to his franchise and is allowed to kill a whole bunch of people, this time in his original baghead form, which is a lot of fun. For me, this movie just kind of improves on all the little details of the franchise, like they figured out how to do it just a little bit better. The characters are a little bit stronger, the kills a little bit more inventive. All of it just fits together a little bit nicer and making for a better entry by just a hair than the previous film. So for me, this one makes it into the top 5. Coming in at number 4 is Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. For me, this is when the franchise was in full swing. They knew what they were doing and they knew how to deliver the goods. And a big part of that here is the characters. One of the big ones being Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis, one of these mainstays of the franchise. And then probably the very lucky casting of Crispin Glover, who is always so weird that he's incredibly watchable. And that is very true here. Overall, this is a movie that just has the right flavoring to make it one of the stronger and distinct entries in the franchise. Kicking off our top 3 is Freddy vs. Jason. Now for me, this blending of franchises is just an absolute blast, and this is probably the best directed and produced film inside of the franchise. Now it probably leans a lot heavier to the Nightmare on Elm Street side of things, and that's largely because that franchise has such a distinct flavor and Freddy is such a strong personality that it kind of dominates the screen, but it also has plenty of iconic Friday the 13th imagery in here, and we do get a bunch of Jason kills as he's taking out high schoolers left and right. I wouldn't call this a scary film, but it's a movie that delivers enjoyable horror for me. Our runner-up is Friday the 13th, 2009. For me, this movie delivers everything that I want from this franchise. I'm not really a Friday the 13th purist, and so I never really understood some of the criticisms of this film, and it seems like a franchise that always kind of changed the rules, so it didn't really bother me that Jason suddenly kidnapped a girl inside of the plot of this film. Along the way, I think we've got some of the stronger characters within the franchise, as well as some of the stronger actors playing these characters when you got Jared Padalecki and Danielle Panabaker in the mix. All of it makes for a movie that has the production value of a 21st century film. It has the aesthetics of a modern film with all the brutality and the plot line of an earlier Friday the 13th film. So for me, this is just like an updated, in all the good ways, version of the franchise. So it is my second favorite of the bunch. But coming in first place is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. For me, this is when the franchise really figured out the tone, because there's always been a little bit of a silliness to the concept here, and this movie managed to balance the scares and the terror of it with kind of a tongue-in-cheek understanding of the subject matter. Along the way, you got Tommy Jarvis returning without kind of the insane, crazy version that we got in Part 5, and it just overall, it's a better structured story with has forward momentum with people that understand that Jason is out there and he lives, and it just seemed a little bit more engaging. It nailed the tone just right. So for me, this is where all the elements came together, where you could have fun with it, you could be scared by it, you could care about the characters. So for me, this is is my #1 Friday the 13th film. Remember to check out that playlist to the left with my best and most up-to-date horror franchise rankings. If you enjoyed this video, there's definitely something in there that you will like. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.